Trump's so-called unchallenged blockade on Iran is coming under serious question once again, as new shipping data shows Tehran's oil is still moving. A second Iranian oil supertanker has reportedly broken through the U.S. blockade and sailed all the way to Indonesia, dealing yet another blow to Trump's narrative of total dominance at sea. Iran has rubbished Trump's boasts, declaring that its ports remain fully active for loading and unloading cargo, and hinting that U.S. pirates are failing to shut down its trade. Energy trackers say some 25 tankers left Iran with crude oil in April alone, raising uncomfortable questions about whether the U.S. Navy has been snoozing in the Strait of Hormuz. Reports now confirm that a second Iranian oil supertanker has bypassed the U.S. blockade and made it all the way to Indonesian waters, highlighting how Tehran is adapting its routes to dodge American pressure. These developments were first flagged by the independent monitoring group Tanker Trackers, showing in real time how Iranian crude is still flowing and where those tankers are ending up. According to Tanker Trackers, the vessel known as Derya successfully passed through Indonesia's Lombok Strait, a key shipping corridor far from the direct reach of U.S. forces. Earlier in April, Derya had reportedly attempted to deliver about 1.88 million barrels of crude oil to India, aiming to service one of Iran's traditional Asian customers. However, that shipment did not go through after Iranian tankers were intercepted by U.S. forces, forcing Derya to abandon its original plan. Subsequently, tracking data showed Derya changing course and heading south, possibly toward new buyers in Southeast Asia where scrutiny is looser. Derya became the second Iranian tanker in just a matter of days to be tracked in Indonesian waters. Multiple appearances in the same region hint at a deliberate strategy by Tehran to turn Southeast Asia into a key outlet for sanctioned oil. Notably, all of this came as Iranian officials publicly stressed that their ports were fully active, loading and unloading cargo without pause. State media have gone further, insisting that no port or shipping operations have come to a halt since the United States announced its blockade. An Iranian-flagged tanker carrying crude oil has reached the Far East after maneuvering beyond U.S. tracking, underscoring gaps in the effectiveness of the naval blockade. The vessel belongs to the National Iranian Tanker Company and is reported to be carrying more than 1.9 million barrels of crude oil, representing a major escape from the Strait of Hormuz choke point. The ship, identified as the Huge, is estimated to be transporting oil worth nearly $220 million, highlighting the monetary stakes of each successful evasion. The Huge was last clearly tracked near Sri Lanka and is reportedly transiting Indonesian waters toward the Rio archipelago, a key hub for ship-to-ship transfers and sales in the Asia-Pacific market. Data from tankertrackers.com suggests that the tanker temporarily evaded automatic tracking systems and likely slipped outside constant U.S. surveillance. The development raises fresh questions about the overall effectiveness of the U.S. naval blockade, as more Iranian-linked tankers appear to be finding routeways through the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia. This comes as President Trump described the Iranian naval blockade as friendly, claiming from a U.S. perspective that it is largely unchallenged and functioning according to Washington's design. Trump made the remark in response to a question about a letter he sent to Congress, in which he stated that the Iran war was effectively over, contradicting the ongoing military and economic pressure. The U.S. has also claimed that its forces have stopped at least 45 ships attempting to breach the blockade, suggesting that, while many vessels are being intercepted, others are still slipping through. Tanker Trackers also reported that roughly 25 tankers departed Iran carrying crude oil in April alone, a number that shows sustained export activity rather than a trickle. According to the same data, 7 ships were forced to turn back and return to Iranian ports, while 2 were seized outright by the U.S. Navy, revealing both the costs and the limits of Tehran's strategy. Amid a pause in the war, an Iranian ship and its crew, which had been seized by U.S. authorities, were later transferred to Pakistan, according to a report by ABC News. Developments reported by ABC News on May 3 cited a spokesperson for U.S. Central Command as the source of the information. The MV Tuskar is now expected to be repatriated to Iran from Pakistan, ABC News reported. The U.S. Central Command said, quote, "Today, U.S. forces completed the transfer of 22 crew members of MV Tuskar to Pakistan for repatriation. 6 other passengers were already transferred to a regional country for repatriation last week. Custody of Tuskar is currently being transferred back to its original ownership after the ship was intercepted and seized when attempting to violate the U.S. naval blockade against Iran last month." Unquote. Iran is hardening its stance over Hormuz, just as the IRGC publicly warned that Trump's choices have shrunk to either war or what they brand humiliating bad deal. Deputy Parliament Speaker Ali Niksad has warned that conditions in the Strait of Hormuz will not revert to their pre-war status, signaling that Tehran sees the current leverage as permanent. Speaking on May 2nd, Niksad described Hormuz as Iran's natural right, and even likened the waterway to the country's atomic bomb, a metaphor for the pressure it can exert on global energy flows. He vowed Iran will not step back from its position in the strait, praising residents of Hormuzgan province and the armed forces there for leaving the enemy helpless during the crisis. Niksad also revealed MPs are drafting a law that would permanently bar Israeli-flagged vessels and restrict passage for hostile states like the U.S., putting legal teeth behind Tehran's threat.
What is certain is that we will not step back from the Strait of Hormuz, and it will not return to its pre-war state, and the people of Hormuzgan province, along with the armed forces stationed there, have carried out a significant task. The enemy was left helpless, and although U.S. President Donald Trump declared he would reopen the strait that had been closed, he was unable to do so. He has now raised the issue of a blockade. Be certain that this too will fail. Under the law that will be adopted, vessels belonging to the Zionist regime will under no circumstances be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Hostile countries, headed by the United States, will also not have the right of passage. Other vessels wishing to transit will do so under the law we enact, and with authorization obtained from the Commander-in-Chief and placed at the disposal of our armed forces. We will provide services such as safety, environmental protection, and guidance for vessels, and we will charge them fees for these services. This is common practice worldwide, and the revenues will be used to strengthen our defensive capabilities, as well as to support people's livelihoods and complete and rebuild the country's infrastructure.
On May 3rd, Donald Trump responded by announcing Project Freedom, a new plan he says will help stranded ships escape the danger zone in Hormuz. According to U.S. leaks, the initiative would act as a coordination cell, guiding U.S.-flagged and other selected vessels through what Washington calls safer routes. Instead of open convoys, it would issue recommended tracks and timing. The plan is advertised as a non-escalatory effort that simply identifies routes free of threats such as mines or harassment, without providing direct military escorts. But the announcement drew a sharp and angry response from Iran, which says any unilateral U.S. scheme in Hormuz breaches the fragile ceasefire. One Iranian MP went further, warning that any intervention by the Americans in Hormuz would be a breach of the ceasefire and could trigger a strong response.